And speaking of sprawl, other industry news, a company that we both know and I'm a huge fan of called Aera Technology. They're off radar in most cases because they've historically played in decision intelligence within specific to supply chains. And always, I mean, they were so far ahead of the industry, in my opinion, of their leveraging of AI and of algorithms to effectively create this abstraction layer that enabled effective decision making. And I think they've executed on this very well. But like many companies, they were caught, I don't want to say flat-footed, but they sort of got overtaken by this whole massive hype around AI. And so they are sort of responding to that. And on their last briefing, you could sort of hear the frustration of like, we were here first and, we're not catching up. We were already here kind of a stuff. But they have a new announcement that they introduced agentic AI, a bunch of stuff. But the two that I'm most interested in is that they're using an agentic AI platform or extending their agentic AI platform to enable decision intelligence more broadly now than supply chain. So they were giving example use cases that were very far afield, anywhere effectively that decisions have to be made within the enterprise. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of them. That's a lot of coverage. And so super, super interesting. And then the one that I'm super excited about and interested in is what they're calling workspaces. And this is something that I believe we're going to end up in. And this is this idea of this sort of AI fueled platform or portal that a knowledge worker goes to, that the system is using AI to sort of bring contextual data into to allow you to function, in their case, to make decisions. And so, early days, and I think they're I don't want to say treading on thin ice. I think they're about to go into the lion's den because they're going to get out of their kind of safe swim lane where they were largely alone, and now in a world where they can easily be conceived as competing with the sales forces of the world, at least at certain levels. And so, I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I've covered decision intelligence probably last 5 or 6 years, and there have been a number of players that have come up in this space, including Era. Um, but the challenge was that honestly, a lot of them were very narrowly focused on specific areas and were not general tools. I would say that's part of Era's challenge that in they could have been a solution that took on the Tableaus and Power BIs of the world and said, we're going to give you the actual information that these solutions are claiming to provide from an analytic discovery perspective. But that's not how they go to market. They went to market as a supply chain specific capability and perhaps with some focus on planning. So honestly, my biggest problem with all the decision intelligence vendors is that they either thought too small or didn't focus on their actual end user, who is the line of business user who is trying to find insights and directional actionable information, and that's not where they've been going so far. So they've either been outflanked by the likes of Tableau and Power BI on one side, or the likes of Slack and Teams on the other, providing some sort of collaborative capability. So I'm hoping this is a step forward because what Era is providing is actually differentiated and useful for the end user community, but it's something they've got to start talking about in greater detail. Like you're talking about these briefings. I've never been on an Era briefing, so I don't know who they reach out to.
I'll make an introduction for you. What is interesting is I think part of the challenge that Era has, and again, this whole space is the idea of decision intelligence is a difficult one to sort of get your head around, right? When and where do we make decisions? And I think that's why they landed on supply chain like as a starting point, because it was they're very clear decision points. Do I order more product or not? Do I move the product from one warehouse to another, right? It was these very clearly delineated decision points that they could then enable both intelligence around and ultimately automate. Right. And so now the question for them is, can they extend that? Can they find those other use cases elsewhere in the enterprise? And I think the answer is going to be yes. I think it's actually super, super powerful. But I think you are correct that their challenge is really in the storytelling about how do they communicate that in a way where it's clear where that's occurring and how that's happening. And I would argue that if I look at the BI tools, my complaint have around the Tableaus and what have you of the world has always been that it's like you're giving me data, but what I want is a decision.
Hmm.
And Era is trying to solve for that. So I think it's interesting. I'm like I said, I'm a fan, and I wish them the best with this. But I do think they're jumping into the deep end of the pool, and they're going to have to fight off some sharks now. But I think
What
I'm
I
mixing
really like
my
about what they're
metaphors.
doing is that they are between two different IT paradigms. We have the dashboard paradigm, which just shows you kind of some static views. You can make them real time if you really try, but at the same time, you're stuck with kind of these four views of what, or six views of the world. And then on the other side, you've got building your own apps. So we've talked about no code and low code apps for a while, but what if you want something kind of in the middle, something that is interactive, but not something where I, as the subject matter expert, have to actually put time to build it in great detail? And this is the promise that Tableau provided on being able to explore your data in greater detail. Aera is actually building that out now, it but having that understanding of what they're doing and then being able to sell it is going to be a challenge because everybody's heard so many promises across BI and AI.